Hello, I'm Robin and welcome to Molten Music Technology. Today I'm looking at possibly the most important audio interface ever created in the history of audio interfaces. Intrigued? Well, you should be. This is the Bitwig, love the orange, loving the orange, Connect 412. Why is it good? Well, potentially this is good because it has deliberately and intentionally bridged the gap between your computer and your modular. Now that might not be of interest to you, and that's fair enough, but this review of this audio interface is going to focus primarily on that connection because that is the element that really interests me. I mean, audio interfaces, there's not a lot to differentiate between them. They're all great these days. They have decent drivers, they have fantastic features and inputs and outputs, and any one of those is going to do a bloody good job. The more you spend, the higher quality, potentially, of the audio and feature set. And so when it comes to reviewing audio interfaces, and I've reviewed a lot, I can tell you, to find something that it actually does, which is interesting and different, is fantastic. And that is what I'm going to dwell upon. Now there's lots of other interesting things in here too, so I will go over the entire deal. I'm just wanting to warn you up front that connection to modular and Eurorack and synthesizers is going to be my primary focus. Now at this point, I've not plugged it in. I've not done anything with it whatsoever. So this is not a pre-prepared, oh, I know what I'm doing kind of video. This is more of an exploratory journey into how easy it is to plug this in and to get working. Because that's something that's often missed in reviews. We often start from the point of view of, oh, it's got 24-bit converters and 96 kilohertz, and I can plug this in here. It isn't that great, and this knob works. And none of the horror of getting to that stage is ever present in reviews. So I'm going to unashamedly blunder my way through this in the hope that it will show how easy, hopefully, or difficult it may be to get this thing plugged in and working. And then I'm going to run it with some stuff. We're going to connect some things up, modular in, modular out, that kind of thing. Might even plug in a guitar and a microphone. Who knows? We'll see how we do as we go. And we're going to see how that works in and out of this audio interface. And also we'll explore whether things like this knob in the front and buttons are actually useful in the day-to-day reality of working with your DAW. We'll use Bitwig. I'll also delve a little bit into Studio One because I want to poke at their CV instrument to see whether it would work and see whether this would work outside of Bitwig in any kind of sensible, successful fashion. So that's the plan. I hope you enjoy the plan, and I hope the realization of that plan comes into fruition. Well, let's get started. So first of all, let's have a look at the box using my overhead camera here. You can see, I mean, it's a remarkably metal box, I have to say. I was not expecting the weight and rigidity of this thing. Not at all. I mean, this is Bitwig's first audio interface, I think. Yes, I believe it to be so. And it's flipping awesome. You can tread on it and it's not going anywhere. Absolutely. It's got a nice big knob on the front, which I believe does all sorts of clever things. A bunch of buttons here, which are yet to light up because I haven't plugged it in. Got some metering, some selection lights, and then this very interesting, well-placed, well-spaced row of what will be CV inputs and outputs. They can also be audio because it's just voltage and signals we're talking about. So it can be either or, not a problem. And it intrigues me because it says out 9, 10, 11 and 12. So there must be another 8 outputs somewhere. Shock. Here they are on the back. I mean, I'm immediately, I must say, disappointed by the fact there's only really one mic input. I mean, I guess Bitwig is saying you're lonely and you're on your own and you're in your studio just working by yourself. So why on earth would you need 2 microphones? I mean, you're not going to have any friends or anything. But I would say 2 mics just gives you that little bit more flexibility so that if you did have someone come in with a voice and perhaps an acoustic guitar that doesn't have a pickup, then you could mic that up and use it. 2 microphone inputs for me kind of feels like a minimum, and so this does feel slightly lacking, and as I say, I'm a bit disappointed because the other feature set on this is extraordinary. Actually, that's a very good point. It's a very good point. Audio interfaces need to be everything to all people, and that's a really tall order because you can only really have one. Now, I know you can aggregate them on the Mac, but whenever I speak to people about that who actually try to do it, it's not as perfect and awesome as many Mac people make out. It's actually a bit troublesome. You can also aggregate audio interfaces through ASIO for all, but again, it's a little bit flaky. It just is. It can work, but it's not the sort of thing you really want to rely on in a proper working studio or situation. And so when we pick our audio interface, it has to do and incorporate everything that we want to do. And that can be difficult. It's really hard to find the one that's absolutely perfect for you. Now, this could be perfect for the modular stuff, but is it going to be perfect for the inputs and outputs here? And that's tricky. However, 4 inputs it does have. It's, you know, the 2 on the front, although will take CV, will also take line level audio. You could use a little mic preamp in order to make up for the lack of the 2 mic preamps on the back. That's certainly possible. You could do that. So there are ways around it, and it is a lot to ask to find the interface which perfectly fits into your studio environment. You're going to have to work with it, work around it, and get over the limitations if that's what you find. If the audio interface itself has that very one key feature that makes it the most important thing in your studio. I just wanted to throw that in there because as I say, I've reviewed a lot of audio interfaces, and it's really hard for a audio interface developer, manufacturer, to hit everybody's sweet spot. There will always be something, and you'll get in the comments, oh, well, it doesn't have this, so that's no good to me, you know, and that's inevitable, unfortunately. Anyway, back to the ins and outs. So other than that, you do have a second input, which is an instrument input. And so if you do have a pickup on your guitar, mic and guitar, you're sorted. So it almost does it, just not quite. It's got these buttons. I wonder why. Why do you need to select buttons on the back? Don't know. We will find out. Here are another 6 outputs. Line level output, so you can presumably mix through a thing. Another aside, right? I'm enjoying this dual camera lark. I don't know why we have outputs on audio interfaces. No, I do know why, so that people can run outputs through external processors and back in. So there, yeah, that can be useful. But honestly, for me, it's one of those things which is not important, because once I'm in the box, I'm kind of in the box. Now, this modular bits ins and out is sort of different, because that's taken us in a different route. So maybe I'm now talking myself into the idea that perhaps I finally do need additional outputs. However, if you're going to be running them through external gear and back in, you're going to need inputs to run them back into, and it only has 4, whereas it has 12 outputs. So I'm always slightly baffled by that balance of small number of inputs, large number of outputs. I'd much rather have inputs, honestly, or a matching number of in and out. But again, that's another aside. So outputs 7 and 8 apparently are on the headphones here, which again is an interesting idea. MIDI is on the horrible, accursed, awful, can't stand them, oh my god, I want to die, mini jack TRS inputs and outputs. However, Bitwig have seen the light with this and have provided the adapters that turn it into regular MIDI. So thank goodness for that. So you're not having to faff around trying to work out why your MIDI doesn't work. So talking of which, the cable situation it came with is rather tasty. A couple of patch cables, which I think is lovely. And look at those lovely sort of stripy, tigery things. Not a bad length either. You know, better than some. You often get little 1-inch cables thrown in, but this is a decent size, so I appreciate that. A MIDI in and out adapter, and then a USB-C, lovely braided USB-C connector cable that is there for your powering and your connection to your computer. Nice and long too. Oh yes, it feels really nice. A nice cable. It's a good thing. Such a good thing. Now, the one last awesome little bit is that this is a USB-C cable. Yeah. So if you've got an older computer that just has USB-A, you are messed up. You can't do it. There's no way you're going to get that to work. But in a little tea bag, Bitwig have supplied an adapter from USB-C into regular USB. Just flipping awesome. Nobody does that. I'm always having to scatter around for flipping adapters to get things attached, whereas Bitwig have supplied every eventuality, and that is noteworthy and worthy of applause, I would say. So that is all of that. I mean, as it turns out, my Surface Pro 9 here is USB-C, so I'm going to be completely sorted. So I'm going to add that adapter there because I will always be needing to use it for other bits and pieces. So there we go. That's the outline. So all we've got to do now is plug it in and see what happens. Let's give it a go. So I'm just going to plug this down here. USB-C. I'm always suspicious of USB-C. It just feels like it clicks in there. And is it fully formed? Is it fully closed? I think that USB-A clung onto these things slightly harder. You could dangle from USB-A, I think. USB-C, not quite so much. But that's not Bitwig's fault. I imagine in time someone will invent some kind of locking mechanism. Right, so this is going to go over the back of my screen and going to find its way into a hole over here somewhere. I get a little ping. I haven't downloaded the drivers. I thought we'd do that together. That would be exciting. So I've got lights on, as you can see, which is nice. Oh, the button's on the back, right? Because you've got a... Ah, there you see. Gotcha. Yeah. Oh, yeah, nice. Okay. Now I understand what the buttons on the back are for. Good. Right. But, I mean, is it installed? That would seem to be remarkable. So if we look at the website for the Connect 412, we can skim all the way through all the blurb, blah, it does all this, oh wow, oh yeah, nice, yes, lovely. To the bottom where it says further downloads, I mean there's a user Connect guide, we should probably download that, shouldn't we? English. Okay, cool. Cool, it's got quite a few things to tell us about it. Oh yeah, right, okay. So yeah, oh nice, yeah, right, lovely. Okay, just to say that this is available for Mac OS, Windows, Linux and iOS, which is pretty cool. So it comes with a dedicated control panel application, which gives you an overview of the inputs and outputs. You need to go and download this. On Windows systems, dedicated ASIO and MN drivers will be installed together with the control panel. That is vital. Without ASIO drivers, we are screwed on Windows. They are drivers that give us low latency and direct access to all of the inputs and outputs on the device. Without that, if it just installs regular Windows audio system drivers, you'll just get stereo in and out, which is not what you want with all these lovely bits and pieces. So we need the full ASIO experience. So to get to that, it says down the bottom here, further information and downloads can be found at bitwig.com. Get connected. Oh, hello and welcome. How nice. Here's what you need. How lovely. Windows. Off it goes. Off it goes. So, you know, how you been doing? You all right? Yeah, no, not too bad myself. Okay, we're there. Are we? Yes, we're there. So go through the setup. We're installing. We're installing. We're installing. Oh, we're done. Right. Finish. Okay. That was exciting, although nothing appears to have changed anywhere. Let's see if it's hiding away under my under this stuff. No, nothing at all. Okay. Bitwig Studio, Bitwig Connect control panel. Let's have a look at that. There we are. Let's pin this to my taskbar so I can get back to it easily. Right, so we have inputs, outputs. We've got settings like buffer size for latency, sample rate. Sample rate can go all the way up to 192, apparently. Good grief. And the buffer size says it will go down to 32 samples. I'm going to stick it at 128, which I find is a good working latency. It reckons about 6 milliseconds. Okay. Gives me an alternative output. All right. Dim level. On the inputs. Okay. So you can swap between line level and instrument level, the same as you can using the button on the back. You can use the control panel to do that. You can also swap between whether it's audio or CV. Interesting. I bet that's the sort of thing I'm going to forget to do and then run into trouble. Perhaps. There's no gain control here as far as I can find. However, there is a gain here. I wonder whether, when I press in one here, that's going to... Oh, it is. Look at that. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. You probably can't see that. Can you see that? I don't suppose you can. So, what... I know. Let's bring this. Okay, swapping to the top camera here. You can see that if I press the button in one here, this is actually moving the knob over here, the gain knob. So that connection is rather good. Go to in 2. I've got gain control there too. That's very nice. Go back to main. I've got the main output 1 and 2 shifting around here. This little halo. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. Headphones. I'll be back. So that's the basic control system worked out to some degree. Let's launch Bitwig, I suppose, and see how that fares. I'm using Bitwig version 5.3.8, which I believe is the latest at the time of filming. I haven't, as I say, installed this before, so we might have to go through a little bit of shenanigans. No. No shenanigans required. It's just come up to say the Bitwig Connect thing is done. Gosh. That was interesting. So I go to settings. I'm just going to check. Yeah, it's gone Bitwig Connect. Da, da, da. All the inputs and outputs are there. Gosh, that was easy. That was really easy. If I bring up the control panel here, does that show anything? Or is that related to this? Don't know, if I close that. Oh, there we go. So when you're looking for the ASIO control panel for buffer sizes and stuff, it brings up this control panel. This is the only one we're having to deal with. That's great. So often audio interface drivers have this sort of hidden control panel for ASIO, this sort of really ropey looking Windows 95 looking thing, which is fine. You can work with that, but I like the fact that it's all tied together. It's very neat. I'm really enjoying so far the elegance with which this has been put together. The control panel thing, the drivers going in, Bitwig seeing it and installing it, it's all been just seamless, which is great. Thank you, Cockerel. Right, so now I should probably play something back just in order to get sound out, and then we can start exploring what it does. So what was the last thing I had going on in here? Oh, I wonder whether that button now works. Interesting. We'll see. That requires a little bit of further investigation, I think. I thought it might do that, but it doesn't. Test jam. We should try that, I think. Okay, so we've loaded up a little project. If I press play on the thing here, is it just going to work? Yes, it is, by golly. And we've got lights. We have lights and flashing things. Which is very exciting. Okay. So at this point, I think I should plug in some audio in order to get an output and see what happens. Okay, in the back here, output wise, outputs 1 and 2 I guess are going to be my main outputs. There's no differentiation between them. It's not saying main out, monitor out, anything like that. You've just got a list of outputs. So I'm going to go 1 and 2, nice chunky cables in there. Okay, success! Now this is an old something or other, an old test project which has got all weirdness going on, and it feels like a couple of things are kind of out of whack. Let me see if I can sort those things out. Now, I'm under the illusion, perhaps, that this knob will do things. So let me just see if that'll work. Now if I press the Bitwig button, I think that might be interesting. Yes. See, I thought that might work. It does. That's flipping amazing. So what I'm finding with your Bitwig button on is that whatever you put your mouse over, you can control. If I go back to the arrange page, I imagine that works on everything. It's just brilliant. Well, that's fascinating. So I think just to summarize this little bit before we get into some of the more interesting details, perhaps about the modular bits and all those sort of bits and pieces. In my general experience at this point of the Bitwig Connect 412 is that it is exemplary. Absolutely mind-blowingly awesome in terms of getting up and running. I haven't had to go through any cards and serial numbers and registrations. I haven't had to fuss around with ASIO drivers and working out what it is I want to select and trying to get those routings and bits and pieces in place. I've intuited my way into understanding how the control panel works in order to change the input types. I'm using door control without having to have set anything up. I'm using parameter control with this whacking great big encoder without having to do anything. Just put my mouse on something and it flipping does it. It's just brilliant. I'm sure if I put scroll on here, it will just scroll and it flipping does. It's brilliant. Just awesome. Now, of course, this is with Bitwig. This is Bitwig's own audio interface with Bitwig. Although I have to say, you know, I've used PreSonus audio interfaces with Studio One and it's nowhere near as smooth as all of that. So, you know, they've done a really great job with this. How well it will work with another piece of software, you know, who knows? We will see, but I don't think it will be any worse than any other audio interface, whereas this connection here is excellent. Now, you know, this is not a new thing, using a knob to control things when you put your mouse over it. You know, for many years, that's been sort of a cue-based thing you can do with their UR controllers. And it's always been a useful thing. It's one of those things, sort of door control from an audio interface, in some ways is kind of cute and quirky as opposed to absolutely essential. Because so often, when you're using a door, you have a QWERTY keyboard in front of you, easily accessible, with all the shortcuts that you would use within your piece of software. So you're recording, you're stopping, you're starting, you're moving about. It does tend to all be there anyway. So I'm not always completely impressed by transport controls and stuff that are on the audio interface, because you don't always have that in the same place. You tend to have that to one side. And is that actually helpful when I can just hit the space bar? I don't know. However, this ability to mouse around and take control of something is pretty remarkable, I think, and would lead me towards perhaps using it. I mean, also the resolution seems really, really good. It's not like clicking its way along. It's actually doing some very fine detail, which is interesting. I wonder whether it does things in the piano roll. What if I put my mouse over that? Does that do anything? I think that might be asking a lot. But, you know, within reason. How about here? Oh, that's a missed opportunity. Am I in the right mode? Yes, I am, because I can still go over here and do that, yeah? All right. So you know, some things more than others. It's not doing anything in terms of automation within piano roll. All right, fair enough. But within the mixer, levels, pannings. Yeah, cool. You know, one day Bitwig are going to make it look a bit more mixery. It's always been its weakest page, I think, the mixing page. I mean, it's come on leaps and bounds since the first days, because things are now a little bit more resizable, but it still kind of looks like a bar graph rather than an actual console. Is that important? I don't know. Anyway, but there we go. It takes all sorts, doesn't it? So, yes, great, fantastic. I think before we get into modular, one more thing to try, which is just to record something so that I can test like the direct monitoring, that kind of thing. Should we do that? So if I was to start with a nice new project and just go from scratch, so an audio track. Let's see if I can remember how you do that in Bitwig, because you know, I don't use it as often as perhaps I could, because I'm mostly hardware these days. So you know, I'm not always spending all of my time on a DAW anymore. So there's my audio track. I want to record in input 1. I think I'm going to get a guitar and a cable. Okay, angle the camera down so you can see the guitar a little bit. more, so, you know, you can relate to what it is that I'm trying to achieve. You take a nice colourful cable, and I wonder whether I can plug that in the back. Yes, I can. That was easy. Right, so using the button on the back, I can swap between line input and instrument input. There you go, there's some input. I'm not hearing anything through at the moment. If I come into Bitwig, select my audio channel, it's going to bring that level up, because it always is very conservatively leveled when you create an audio track in Bitwig. I think they're a little bit timid about things. Inputs, Bitwig Connect, input 1 I believe I'm on. There it is, it's getting some level. I'm going to select that. Still no monitoring. What are we currently on? It's on auto. If I put it to on, there we go. Now I can feel a little bit of latency there, so I'm just going to go into settings and pull this down perhaps a little bit further. So if I go down to 64, see whether it still holds on to itself. Oh, that's better. Now if I go to some kind of guitar something or other, guitar rig, guitar solo, acoustic guitar comp, bass comp, clean guitar, lead guitar. Let's go with lead guitar 1. But if I was to turn monitoring off, how do I do direct monitoring? Now I think that was in the control panel. If I bring that up, there was something here, direct monitoring main or phone. So if I bring that up there, okay, so I can use direct monitoring directly from the panel. Which is fine, or I can go back into here, turn on the monitoring. There we go. I can even put my mouse over that. And use the magic knob to do everything. And then presumably I can hit record and record. Well, record and play. I love the way how it looks like the waveforms are being drawn in physically by pencil. I think that's just the most extraordinary thing. So there, basic in and out audio interface, bits and pieces coming in, going, and all that kind of thing. I don't want to spend any more time in the basic functions of an audio interface. I want to have a look now at the control voltage in and out to see what that does, how well that works, see if I can understand again how the grid thing in Bitwig works and all the modulation settings. I'm going to have to read up again about it. We shall see. I will patch a few things in together and see how that goes. But first, I'm going to go and have some lunch. Right, so we're back. Now we have to get stuck in to the gooiness of the whole Eurorack malarkey. Right? So we're going to be using the inputs and outputs on the top here, patching those directly into our modular. How exciting is that? Now, in order for this to work, these inputs and outputs have to be DC coupled. Quick word on that. DC coupling is simply the filtering or lack thereof of those audio connections, because normally speaking, with most audio connections, you stick in a high pass filter so that very, very rumbly low ends or flat voltages and interference don't get carried through on the audio. But in terms of control voltage, we want low, slow moving and flat voltages. That's what we use. You use a flat voltage to denote a pitch. You use a slow moving voltage to do modulation. We want those things to come through. And so for an audio input to have that, it has to be labeled as DC coupled, which means it's ready and able and willing to accept a direct current voltage, a DC voltage. Does that make sense? Most audio inputs and outputs are AC coupled, so they're ready to experience high frequency sound, therefore sound waves rather than slow moving voltages. Okay, so many audio interfaces are, well, mostly are AC coupled, some are DC coupled, and they provide us with an opportunity to get modulation out of our computer and into our modular, and out of our modular into our computer. Now, it will vary enormously from interface to interface on what that means, but even if it is DC coupled, there's no standard as to how much voltage will come in and come out and how that is scaled through the system. And so to get around that, we have to do all sorts of calibration jumps in order to get the voltage range in line with voltages that mean something for our modular. The beauty with the Connect 412 is that they know what the voltage is going in and out. They've calibrated it already, and it's good to go without any fuss and without any mess, which is brilliant. It cuts out an entire stage of messing about. So we're going to give that a go. As far as I'm aware, as far as I can find out, it's only these top inputs and outputs that are DC coupled. Everything else runs normally AC coupled as normal audio interfaces do. So it's just these top ones that we're interested in. I'm not going to be testing the other ones because there doesn't seem to be any point. So we have 2 inputs, 4 outputs. That's what we can use. So we could bring modulation in to control things within the software, potentially sequencing in, potentially. Or we can take modulation out, LFOs and bits and pieces and envelopes, or we can take sequencing out. CV and gate, 1 volt per octave, and gate outputs. 2 lots of, because you need a pair for each of those. That's what we can try to achieve, so let's do that. So I'm going to bring the camera in to focus on the screen and the bits and the modular a bit more, and we'll see if we can work this out. Right, to start with, I've got a new project, and this, if I remember rightly, is how you send things from this into your modular. So let me see if I can get something running on the modular to see whether I can therefore modulate something. That would be good, wouldn't it? So here I've got the Pony VCO being ARPed by the ARP of darkness, going through the Sunless City filter. And what I want to do, I just want to modulate the filter. Very simple. But let's remove that for the moment and focus on doing what we need to do here. Okay, so instrument channel. You don't want an audio channel, funnily enough. You need an instrument channel, and into that we need to provide the devices which enable us to route stuff from within Bitwig to our modular. Now it's called hardware instrument, I think. I'm going to stick HW in the plugin everything browser thing over here, and I've got hardware CV instrument, I've got hardware CV out. So I'm just going to take a CV out, plop that down here, and that allows us to send voltage directly from this out of a physical output. So at the top it says no output currently. I'm going to click on that, go to Bitwig Connect, and go to output 9, output 9, output 9, output 9, there. Now if I take a patch cable, this is going to be long enough, not quite, alright, I'll have to use another patch cable. So patching output 9 to simply the CV input on the filter. Now if I set that going again, I should be able to control this knob here, and that will control the filter. Yes! So that's already awesome. Now of course I could use my magic button and do that. That's pretty amazing. Well, it's not amazing. I've done it before. I've done it many times before. It's just the ease with which this is working is pretty stunning. Lovely. Now the great thing you can do in Bitwig is you can add modulators to that. So we could add, for instance, a classic LFO. And I can send whatever modulators I create in here are coming straight out of here into my real life, real world hardware modular system. Let's add another one. So I'm now modulating the speed of the other modulator, if you see. Let's add something else, like some steps. And I can choose from a whole load of different ways of taking either modulation or even MIDI and transforming that to control that one control voltage knob in any way that I choose. For instance, I could use an envelope. Let's see if I can recall how to make that work. So there's my envelope, but I need something to trigger it. At this point I don't have anything going on. So I could create a scene. So I've created a note which is causing the trigger of the envelope, which is here. Now nothing here is associated with anything else that's going on within the modular. There's no shared clock or anything like that. This is purely running stuff from here, unrelated, into what's going on here. So the speed that you can hear things moving at is not together. We can look into that in a minute. Okay, so let's see if we can do more then. So we're going to want to have a shared clock is something that we've now talked about. Let's see whether we can do that. And there's a hardware clock out. There's a CV in. So if I take a clock out, put that down here. If I send that out of 10, would that be helpful? Let's try. So output 10. And then what I'm going to do is plug out 10 into, so what's running this? Well, I could run the ARP of darkness directly. I don't have to run it from something else, so I can clock directly into my sequencer here, my ARP of darkness sequencer. That should be fine. I should be able to hit go. So now that's starting to work. These are starting to run together. So I'm now clocking my sequencer from here, and that's firing an envelope from Bitwig, this one here, which is controlling this knob, which is connected to the filter. Are you with me? I can also apply the LFO to it as well, so I've now got the LFO moving the filter as well as the envelope. I can control all of it here. And this is all running to the clock here, which is 110. I could bring that down. See, you don't have to do anything clever with control voltage. There's no MIDI sync trying to work out how to do MIDI sync from one thing to another using MIDI time clock or song position and all that kind of thing. It's just clocked. So I've got a clock going into my sequencer, so that is running at the same time as the sequencer within Bitwig. Now I can change how that clock is running. At the moment it's running 16ths. If I put that down to 8ths. It's still not quite on every note, so we'll bring it down to a quarter note. I've now got an envelope on every note. Brilliant. So the final stage then of this is to use these last two outputs here, 11 and 12, as the sequencer, so that these notes from here, these triggers, are actually there controlling pitch as well. Right. So how do we do that then? That is the next question. So we go back to our hardware instrument. We're now going to use the hardware CV instrument. Put this in here. Now, in days gone past, you would have to do lots of shenanigans to get this calibrated. This strange diagram here is kind of a sweep through the response of your oscillator to check pitch against voltage to make sure that it's being used properly. What I'm hoping is that this is just going to be able to play a tune without having to do any of that. That is my hope at this point. So what choice do we... So we've got pitch out and we've got gate out. So I'm going to put gate out to 12, pitch out to 11. Then I'm going to patch that, the pitch, into the oscillator. Where's it currently coming from? There. And a long cable. So pitch to the 1 volt per octave input on the oscillator. Well, that should be it. Now at the moment there's no gate, as it were. That's interesting, because I'm not using an enveloped or a VCA currently. I'm just using the filter, and the filter is being fired by the other modulation. So I'm just going to see whether the pitch information works first. Let's play with that a little bit. So that's C1, that's why it's a little bit low. See, that's an octave. That sounds like an octave to me. It really was as simple as that. That's amazing. So instead of using this modulator here, I can just kill that. I can use the gate output to fire a hardware envelope in order to control it. So I take output 12, which is acting as a gate. That is going to go into my NV machine here. And I'm going to patch that into my variable input. Okay, so what's happening here is that it's sort of playing legato, so it's not firing every gate because these notes are essentially butted up against each other. So in order to get around that, I don't know if I've done something wrong, but I don't have the brain power to look into why that's happening and what's going on. So I'm working around it, and I'm not sure whether this is the right thing to do or not, but just by shortening the notes, because the gate fires at the beginning of the note, boom, 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 and because they're overlapping, it wasn't giving it another chance to fire. So I'm just backing the notes off a little bit, the length of the notes, in order to allow the space for the gate to close so that it can refire. That's super. So as far as the outputs go here, that was just Dream Team easy to do, which is one of the major battles with using a computer with modular in this way, that unless you're set up all the time, the hassle of putting it together just tends to be too much. That's what I've found. So while I've enjoyed doing videos on the Surface and modular and how you do those and DC coupled audio interfaces and putting it all together, those have been fun to produce. It's not something I like to do every day or in my normal usage because it's just too much hassle. This is no hassle at all. No hassle at all. I'm quite upset that I have to give this back. Because this would be a really useful way of me testing and reviewing modules and modular over by my computer on the other side of the room. That would make my life a heck of a lot easier. Anyway, by the by, what we want to do now is show modulation coming back in. So to our little, let's call it a baseline, shall we? We need to add something software driven that we can then control. Let's take it in this DCO 106. There we go. So this is a polyphonic Juno type emulation. If I add something in here, let's stick in sort of a like an A minor chord or some such, like that, and like that. See how that sounds like? Sounds beautiful. Right, so that should be coming out of the computer somewhere, shouldn't it? Well, it is. Main. There we go. So what I need to bring in is this hardware CV input. Now I can do that within the sort of the modulator section of this panel down here, which represents the DCO 106 that I've got loaded. See, that's the interface. This is all the parameters. What I want to do is just move the filter so it appears on my list. Okay, so my filter controls at the top. I can open this up in order to open up the modulators, and in here I've got a hardware input. So let's have a look at those parameters. Choose the input. So I'm going to take some kind of LFO and plug it into here. So I'm going to use input number 3. Then I need to plug something in. So I'm going to take an LFO from over here. See that? I'm taking this LFO here. That's going. I'm going to plug it into input 3. Now I'm going to check on my panel here that I've got that set up as CV and not as audio. CV 3 and 4, yeah. So it's not being routed through the mixer for listening to. I think that's what's important there. So I've now got something coming in. Yeah, I can see it on this screen here. You can see the little red line. So I can speed up the modulation and you can see it change there. And now I can patch that into my synth.
So just to recap, got my little sequence here playing, which is playing a modular oscillator, the Pony VCO over here, through a modular analog filter. This is playing the tune. The gate is also triggering an envelope in my modular. So that little synth voice is being totally run by the pitch and CV output from that channel. I've then got a software voice from a Juno 106. If I can find the right button, Juno 106, which is being playfully modulated, not by MIDI, it's being modulated by a hardware LFO. From there, which is really nice. Now at this point I kind of have to stop because I don't have anything more. I don't have any more inputs and outputs. I have one more input, so I could bring another modulator in. Potentially. I mean, well, let's do that. Just to keep it all going. So I'll just take another simple LFO. I'll plug that into input 4 and I'm going to plug it into the mix. And the resonance all at the same time. And that, very simply, is Bitwig and the Bitwig Connect controlling and being controlled by your modular. Now there's a lot more you can do. It doesn't just have to be simple LFOs, it doesn't have to be pitch and CV in and out. It could be anything. It could be any manner of stuff that you've generated and created within the grid within Bitwig in order to route that out to a CV knob, which then controls stuff. Or you can send sequences in, you can send modulation, randomization, envelopes, all sorts of different forms of change can be funneled in to control your software if you find that interesting. Of course, you don't need any of this. You can do it all within software. All of this becomes irrelevant if you're into software synthesis and you just want to use that, you want to use a MIDI controller, sure, go ahead. But if Eurorack floats your boat, if modular is something that inspires your creativity and sparks you into movement and change and fascination, then this little box could really open that up. Right, let's try it in a different piece of software, so it's not going to be anywhere near as easy. Now, Studio 17 brought in the CV instrument, which means that Studio One is capable of taking a MIDI pattern or MIDI tune, a MIDI melody, converting that into CV and squirting it out of an audio output. Now, it had a bit of a shaky start, at least with my system, because my audio interface refused to work with it. This should work with it, hopefully. Let's just have a little look. Nice blank project. Oh, what I'll probably need to go to is go to the settings and make sure that the audio interface is all set up. So the audio interface. Yeah, no, that's not going on. So let's go to the options. set it up in here, the Bitwig Connect. Thinking about it. Alright, there it is. That's looking okay. Let's go to make sure that the ins and outs are set up. So on this we've got, it's recognised a couple of inputs and the loop back. Alright, so it's all there. I've just got to create it. So 3 and 4 I'm going to need. So I'm going to add a mono, which is going to be input 3. It's going to be mono, and I'm going to put CV in, CV in 2. Go to the outputs. 1, 2, 3, 4. CV out 4. So a little bit more setup required. Then what I need to do is find the CV instrument, which should be here. CV instrument. Drop that in. Right. Okay. With a bit of luck. So pitch out was 9. Where's that going to? No, it wasn't. Pitch out was out 11, which is now 3. It's very frustrating within Studio One. In the CV instrument, it doesn't label the inputs and outputs here as you have just labeled them within the song setup. It doesn't. It just lists them. So we are going down here. So all that business I did beforehand was completely irrelevant. And then the gate output 12. Now with some luck, that should just sort of work. I'm not sure. That sounds right exactly. Let's just calm the effects down a little bit. If I was to open up a scene and put in a bit of a pattern, that doesn't sound quite right to me. So now what I had hoped was that it would just sort of work, which is a shame. Maybe there's something I can calibrate it. I was trying to avoid doing that. Right, I'm going to have to try to calibrate then. So for there, I need to put in an input. I'll take CV in number 1 there. And what I have to do is take an output of the oscillator and plug that in order for the software to monitor it, so it has a pitch that it can measure in order to get the calibration right. Is that complicated? Yeah, it's not been complicated. I can plug that in there. I'm going to hit calibrate and see what happens. Alright, I think it's done. It's flashing as if to suggest that might be right. I was hoping for a green. Green is what we want, really. I'll take that out of there. Yeah. It's so not working, is it? Let's see if our thing plays now. Yeah, I got a green tick. Okay, great. So the calibration worked. which is brilliant, but let's just take the shine off the Connect a little bit. I kind of thought that because this was factory calibrated, that it would just work, but it evidently didn't. Now that is more likely to be a fault of the CV instrument within Studio One, because it is, let's face it, a bit ropey. However, the calibration worked, seemed to work fine, so we now should be able to start using it to create a quick tune. Let's give that a go. Now Studio One doesn't have any ability to pull in control voltage for control. All we've got is the option to send stuff out. But we could do it, potentially, on 2 lots of outputs. So could I potentially use this CV instrument just to trigger? I'm going to create a drum pattern here, I think. We can create another track for the what was I'm just using for output 9. Oh, I have to think about it a little bit. Have another drum pattern. So within this cacophony, I'm using the modular Pony VCO, going through the Sonicity filter, being enveloped by the NV machine, all in modular. Kick and snare is coming from Queen of Pentacles over here, and all of that is being sequenced and run from Studio One. I've got no modulation coming in this time, just stuff going out. To accompany that, I've got a little bit of Rhodes from within Studio One. So that is the melding and malting and combining of modular and software. It does have a fiddly aspect to it, as you can see as I'm trying to put this together, but once you're settled in it, it then starts becoming second nature. The fact that these connections here are right there on the top and you're not fiddling around behind an audio interface or something like that is fantastic. It is absolutely right there, and that makes all the difference, I think. And so there you have it. There you have it. The Bitwig Connect 4/12. 4 in, 12 out. What interests us is the 2 CV inputs and 4 CV outputs that are mounted on the front to give you complete access, always there, always able to patch it in. So many times trying to do reviews and videos on audio interfaces, interfacing with modular, you're having to fiddle around the back, you're having to have adapters to get big jacks to small jacks. All of that shenanigans is swept away by the ease and simplicity of this being here.
Of course, you've still got cables and patch cables all in the way and getting into knots and messing you about. Absolutely, that's part of the game. That's part of the thing that we like. I tell you, I don't mind spending a couple of minutes untangling a cable compared to spending several hours troubleshooting a piece of software. So that is not a problem. The interface itself, as I say, it's very, very solid. It didn't go anywhere. It's not going anywhere. The feel of this knob is good. It's a great size. There's no real wobble to it. I mean, it is a plastic knob, I suppose, but it's very, very smooth and appears to do the job just as you like. The connections that it has and the ability to control bits within Bitwig, excellent, superb. Love all of that. And it's overall, it's obvious connection and deep level embeddedment in Bitwig is top notch. Brilliant. What a great combination. Taking it into Studio One, well, you know, it had a bit more of a challenge. It had a bit more of a thing to do, but then Studio One isn't smooth in terms of its use of CV ins and outs quite yet, but you know, it's getting there. It's early days for it. But I was still able to use all 4 outputs with the CV instrument without any bother and run things together in the way that it does. So, top job. It does it. Coming back to the overall interface as a whole, the lack of that second mic input is a slight slip, I think, in my view. I would like, honestly, because I'm into the modular, I would like to have more of the DC coupled ins and outs. I'd have more of these 2 rows of those, for instance, would be great. A little patch bay of those, something like that would be awesome. I would love to see this in other audio interfaces moving forward, you know. I think that would be enormously interesting. But in terms of using it, plugging things in, the latency, what it sounds like, it's all pretty good. The software-driven control panel is all right. I wouldn't mind those buttons to swap inputs to be on the front rather than round the back. I wouldn't mind an individual gain knob, but then this does do that job once you've got the right thing selected. So, you know, yes, on the whole, good. It has loopback, which means you can record another piece of software through itself into its own insides. What that means is, if you're running your DAW using this audio interface, you can record into the DAW from another piece of software that's running on the loopback drivers. It can then go straight in and appear as audio inputs, which is a great feature that everything needs to have these days. So all of that's really good. What a great device. Now, how much is it? All right, 439 UK pounds. It's a premium-ish. It's that mid-level price, you know. It's not going all the way whack up the top, but it's not a casual purchase. However, if one mic's enough, if mic and guitar is enough, if mic, guitar and perhaps a synth is enough, then, and you're starting to expand and push your way into modular and you want to connect the two, there's no better interface at this time. So, Bitwig, we want a sort of 1616, which is all modular. Well, no, and 2 mic inputs. So let's call it a 2020. So you've got, 4 mic inputs / guitar inputs, and then 16 CV inputs, and then 16 CV outputs, and 4 other additional outputs, maybe. Something like that. How does that sound? Sounds quite good to me. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. I've got to give it back. Well, I hope that was useful. And in the meantime, go make some tunes.